Good morning, fam. Happy Mother's Day to all you moms, all you different types of moms, whatever your role looks like. Happy Mother's Day. I wanted to share something with you guys. This is my kitchen. There for a few weeks now, my husband and I have been walking through a different season, and he felt really discouraged the other day, and I'm not always home. Like I spend nights away from home sometimes, and we work different schedules, so I put that there to encourage him. And it wound up being really encouraging for me this morning. So Romans 8:28 through 30 is what I just showed you. We know that all things work together for the good of those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. For those he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, so that he would be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. And those he predestined, he also called. And those he called, he also justified. And those he justified, he also glorified. All right, so today's going to be a little different. I don't even know how I'm going to handle this. I don't actually want to do this, but this is what the Lord's telling me to do today. It's Mother's Day. Mother's Day is extremely hard for me. I actually thought I had escaped the hard part this year. Well, in all reality, I hadn't even acknowledged. Somehow I had gotten all the way through to last night without thinking about how much I actually, just to be completely honest, how much I actually hate Mother's Day. And it's not because, I've got my mother. My mother's amazing. I've got a lot of women in my life who have the role of mother, whether it be to their children or in some way to me or my grandmother, my aunt, my sister who is a mother. I've got a lot of moms in my life that I think are amazing moms, and I love that they get a day to be honored. But for me, Mother's Day, it's hard. So I have one stepdaughter. My husband has one daughter. She's very dear to me. She is my daughter. I've also got, a handful of other kids, one of which I still speak to on a regular basis, and the others, we don't talk very often, but I called them my kids for many years now, and I will never not call them that. I love them. I love them like my own children. And I do know this because I have had children. I have given birth to two babies. The first one, this is hard. The first one was a miscarriage at about 5.5 months pregnant, somewhere around there. That was my guesstimate at the time. I was in my early 20s. Hadn't made it to the doctor yet. I had been procrastinating. My boyfriend wasn't really excited about me being pregnant. So I went into labor, went to the hospital, had the D&C done, and somehow still managed to miscarry the child at home. And I remember looking at the fingers. That was really hard for me, and I was not sober. I actually remember more than once crying while I was pregnant because I couldn't get high, because I would try to smoke my drugs and it would make me sick and I would throw up, and it was just, I was miserable. So the miscarriage was my fault. I'm not sure I've ever openly just told that to a group of people before, and now I'm putting it on the internet. That's hard. But if I had not lost that child, I would not have been able to get pregnant with the child I gave birth to. We called him Z. He doesn't go by that anymore. He's 12 today. I haven't seen him since his 5th birthday in the DCS visitation room. I raised him for the 5 years that I had him without his dad, in addiction, obviously. If you'd asked me then, or if you, at the time, I thought I was an amazing mom, and for what I was working with and the state of mind that I had, I did do okay. He never went without. He was so loved. He knew he was loved. But I was a drug dealer. How good of a mom can you be when you're a drug dealer? Losing him spiraled me out to a place that I didn't even know existed. I had been in some dark places before that. But losing him I knew nothing about myself anymore. By the time I got sober and graduated from the program I went to and took care of my court stuff to where I was no longer on bond. I was on probation, but I wasn't on bond. And I was able to, if I had so chosen to try to fight it and get him back. He had already been with his family, who had wound up adopting him after 1 year of me not cooperating with DCS. He had been with them for 5 years, so he was... No, my math is so wrong. It is so wrong. It was close. It was close. I don't even know where in my mind I was thinking that. Anyways, he had been with them a long time. And I was planning on going to court and trying to get him back, getting a lawyer, all these things. But the first step to that was me seeing if his adopted parents would be willing to go about another way, to do anything different than that. So I chose a time where I knew he would be in school when I went and visited them. And when I saw his adopted mom, I didn't see his adopted dad, but I saw his adopted mom, who are people that I've known for a long time, since I was like 13 or 14 years old. And I saw not only the things that she had to say about my son, but I saw the difference in her and her home from what I had known before they got my son. I saw the light that he brought into their life, and I saw how good of a life and a home environment he had. And comparing that to what I had done, it didn't feel right, and it also didn't feel right remembering the turmoil of my life with the in and out and the back and forth and the parents not getting along and all these things in my life, and how much that had changed my childhood. I made a really hard decision to not pursue getting him back, and to not pursue aggravating his adopted parents if they weren't comfortable with me being around. So I've got 4.5 years sober today. I walk with the Lord so closely. I have a home, a job, 2 jobs. I maintain very well, and I've chosen not to get my son back, and not to be the mother that I maybe could be, because it feels like that's what's right. And what's crazy is this might be the first time that making that decision might have been the first time in my life that I did something extremely painful, experienced extreme pain and peace at the same time. This has been a journey, a really hard journey for me. Sorry, I'm trying not to cry. Because how do you be okay with choosing not to be a mother to your child, right? Like I said, I've got my daughter, and I've got a handful of other children that I love dearly, and that I play mother to when they allow me to, anyways. And also where I work, I'm almost like a spiritual mother to women, and the Lord has used that to show me and to encourage me and to comfort me many times. Just because I don't have my son does not mean that I'm not a mother in some way. But it still comes back and haunts me every once in a while. So here recently, I've been able to share about my journey with my son, specifically with one of our students we have right now, who's different than most of our students usually are. Different case, different. It's a lot more difficult of a situation, and she's got some really, really. She carries a lot of guilt for her role as a mother, and how she perceives herself as a failure there. And I was able to share with her the other day things that I've actually never even got out of my face before, never said, about my walk with the Lord, with my journey with my son, and sharing how I wasn't that person that I was at that time, and when I was his mother by law, and when I made all those bad choices and did all those wrong things, and who I am today, not even the same person. And I also shared with her how my life today would not be the way that it is. I could not do, honestly, probably any of what I do if I had a child that I was taking care of, that lived with me, that was my responsibility wholly. I don't think my life would have one thing in it that's the same as it is today. And knowing that I walk with God, and that He calls me to do each thing that I do, and I have to agree that this is His plan, and I have to believe that this is good. And I was able to talk to her about that the other day in complete confidence with that. And the enemy tried to get in my mind for just a moment and tell me, You're not supposed to not be sad when you admit those things. You're not supposed to not feel guilty when you tell someone that you chose not to get your son back. But I was able to get that out of my mind before it grew roots. Or I thought. I don't know. I'm not even sure right now. I'm really battling this today. Mother's Day is very hard for me. So I thought I was good. Mother's Day didn't even cross my mind in a negative way. You know, all the things I usually deal with every year didn't even cross my mind until last night at church. I go to church on Saturday nights at one of our churches here in town. And they always celebrate, Mother's Day. They celebrate the mothers. A couple weeks ago, they celebrated those that were graduating college and school, high school and stuff. They always celebrate whoever's being celebrated on a holiday or something that's, widespread. They celebrate. So they wanted to, he thanked all the mothers. Well, first there was a video. There was a video and it had scripture, and what hit me like a ton of bricks, and I started crying right there. And that's when everything hit me like a wave. The last comment on the video was something along the lines of, whatever your role looks like today, you're still a mother. And I realized that I hadn't put two and two together about it being Mother's Day and me not actually being a mom to my son. And everything changed. I was doing great and everything changed. And then the pastor wanted all the mothers to stand. And my husband asked me why I wasn't standing. All the mothers had a rose that they could have grabbed on the way out of the building, and I chose not to grab the rose because I was telling myself I'm not a mother. Where's my kid? I'm not a mother. So dealing with that last night, a little bit off and on this morning, and usually I'll find a way not to, before I would stay in bed, and before I got sober, I would be absolutely oblivious to anything around me. I would be so messed up on Mother's Day. But today the Lord is telling me to deal with it, to face it, and to acknowledge that first of all, He has a plan and He has a purpose, and nothing that I can do and nothing that you can do can change His plan or His purpose. Our free will that He has given us doesn't mean He hasn't worked it out already. So this is how it actually works. I'm trying not to get sidetracked too. This is how it actually works. He has a plan. He has what He wants for us. And, that was the Garden of Eden before sin ever entered. Perfect relationship, sinless. That's what He wants for us. But He gave us this thing called free will. And it enables us to do whatever we want. And unfortunately, us being sinful humans, we have a tendency to serve ourselves instead of God, to seek things that give us instant gratification, or that actually even serve the enemy instead of God, and create distance between us and Him. And He doesn't like that, but He allows us to do that because who wants a bunch of robots that love us because we programmed them to? God wants us to have a relationship with Him where we love Him because we choose to. So, Him being God, almighty, sovereign, limitless, not bound by time God, well, we have free will. It's not that He plans necessarily for us to do these things that hurt ourselves and hurt others and all this wicked, evil stuff in the world today, but He does know about it ahead of time. So what He does is He works all these things. He knows. I'm just going to use myself for an example. He knows that He has this one daughter, me, who's going to come to know Him at a very young age, and is going to love Him, and is going to go astray, is going to see everything in her life around her that was centered on God fall apart, and everything fall to the wayside that was faith, and is going to remember that in the future when she thinks of God, and see it as unstable, and see it as unpredictable and unreliable and untrue, and even become bitter and angry with God, and go off on this 20-30 year kick of self-serving and depression and suicidal thoughts and hurting others and wrecking her life. He's going to see her choices ahead of time, and He's going to work that out for His good. So what He's going to do, in my case, He used my son to teach me how to love. I didn't know how to love until that day in the hospital when I had a child in my arms that had came from me, that my body had created, God had created through my body. I didn't know what love was. It wasn't that my life changed. It was that the whole world changed in that moment. And I became a little bit less selfish, Not enough, though, apparently. And it took me not having my son anymore to find the healing that I needed, to find the room in my life to be able to address the things in me that needed to be addressed. Because had I not ever had the space in my life, being a mom, there was many times actually, that while I was still his mother legally, that I tried to get sober, even that I reached out to God, especially when I was in jail. I always reached out to him. But then getting out and trying to maintain my mental health, which is a real thing. I battled suicide thoughts, many suicide attempts for a long time, for my entire addiction, and so long before that. So trying to maintain my mental health, trying to maintain keeping a roof over the head of myself and my son, trying to maintain being a mother, and trying to maintain newfound sobriety, I wasn't capable of it. I wasn't, and I didn't know the resources that were available. I had nobody around me to tell me about the resources. They're there. I know now, because of the field that I work in and what I do and the connections I have now, that there were so many resources and so many things I could have done, but I didn't know about any of them. I thought I had to do it by myself. And none of it worked. I couldn't stay sober. The only way I knew how to be okay was to be high, and the only way I knew how to be a mother was to be okay. That's it. I had to be okay to be able to take care of my son. So had I not lost custody of him, I wouldn't have been able to figure out what was wrong with me and how to get better. So I can see there how the Lord used my son to heal me even. And then when I visited my son's house while he was at school that first time, it was like I've never seen anything through that perspective before, where I could look around her house and look at her and see the healing in her and in her life that my son had brought to their family, and knowing that my son needed them, and that they were doing everything for my son that I couldn't, and that he was doing the same for them. How could I even mess that up? How could I even mess with that at all? That was God's plan, obviously, because I never would have thought of that. So I can see God all over all of this, but when you look at it in a nutshell, it's kind of like, it's not like that. So there's another way to me that this expresses God's will, because what I've learned in my life is that God's plan never makes logical sense to me. Nothing God has ever done in my life has made sense in my brain until after it was over. When I look back at situations after I've gotten through them, I'm like, this is the only way that it would have made sense, honestly. But going through it and stepping out in faith in the things that God was doing, it's like, wow, this is not going to work, So there, I see that. And I had another point and I lost it completely. The other point. So what God calls us and what God gives us, no one can take away. No one can take that from us. No circumstances can take that from us. None of our failures and our mistakes and our choices can take what God gives us and what God calls us away from ourselves. So this is where I want to speak to the mothers out there. I know a lot of people who have made poor choices in their lives and cost themselves the same things I've cost myself. And I know a lot of people who carry the guilt and shame around. And today I can realize that I can be hurt. I can feel the pain. I can feel the sorrow, but I don't have to feel the guilt or the shame. And I don't. Today I don't. Today I'm sad, but I'm not wallowing in my regret. I am thankful that God has used this in so many lives. And I'm thankful for the way that things are in my life and in my son's life today, even though it hurts. And I want to encourage every other mother out there who's had miscarriages, who has lost a child, who has lost custody of their children and has not seen them, who has gave a child up for adoption, and even those that this is not something I can relate to personally, but my miscarriage being something that was entirely my fault, I can on some level. Those who have had abortions and have lived with the shame and guilt and regret of that afterwards, I want to encourage you that that's not what identifies you. God made you a mother when he planted that child in you, and that's still what you are. That is still what you are. He trusted that to you, and he had a plan before you made your choices for your choices. Just because our choices don't line up with what God says, the good, the right, the true, doesn't mean that he won't use it. I've seen God use some really crazy stuff. He uses people who don't believe in him. He uses circumstances that are not from him. He uses our wrong choices and beliefs that we have that completely go against him. He uses those things and works them together for a purpose, because he knows. He sees us. Look here. He sees us. He knows way before our great grandparents even were thought of, let alone us. He knows if we're going to choose him or not. And he knows how to work everything together. And if you really think about it, everything's connected like intricate spider webs all over the world through generations and generations. We talked about this a few weeks ago. Behind and forward generationally. And across the world, God uses people to connect to each other and to build things up for hundreds of years later. And everywhere around the world, he uses these things. So he's been building your life for a long time, knowing all the choices that were going to be made, all the things that were going to happen in each life up to that point. And he knows who's going to be his. He knows who is going to turn to him and look at him and choose him, and who is going to live for him. So he knows to work the things for that person's good, because, I'm going to read this one more time, Romans 8:28 through 30. We know that all things work together for the good of those who love God, who were called according to his purpose. For those he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, so that he would be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. And those he predestined, he also called. And those he called, he also justified. And those he justified, he also glorified. So why I showed you that scripture on my kitchen wall is because I wrote that for my husband more than me. It speaks a lot to me, especially when I'm struggling. But usually when I'm struggling, it's my own fault. But my husband was having a really hard time, and it was just everything was hard for both of us a couple weeks ago. And I wrote it for him, and it was funny because I was walking into my kitchen, fixing to get ready for the day, and I read it, and I was like, I haven't even read that in like a week, and I'm sure Jeff's not either, because I put him up there and I read him every day, and then when I stop paying attention to him, and I realize I'm not paying attention, I know to change it. It's time for me to put something up there that speaks to me today, that encourages me today, and my husband. And I was about to change it, and then it wasn't even a whole minute later, I was hanging onto my sink crying, and my back was to it, and I wasn't reading it, but I had just read it, and the Lord brought me back to that. And I cried even harder. Like, that wasn't actually for my husband, even if it was for me. It was for me for today. And that's just proof. That's one tiny little smidgen of evidence how God works in our lives from all the things before. Things that have absolutely no relation to the things we're going to walk through later, or the things someone else is going to walk through later, whatever it may be, no relation to the future circumstances. And he'll use those moments and the things that we do in those moments to feed us and to encourage us and to provide for us in the future. There's not a moment wasted with God. Every moment contributes to something in his kingdom. Every moment, every action, every pain, every mistake, everything contributes to what God has for his children. So, I don't really know how to end this, except to say again, Happy Mother's Day to every mother out there. If you have ever been a mother in any way, then you're still a mother today. And you guys have a wonderful Sunday.